This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world. You're listening to Place to Be Nation's Main Event, a roundtable experience looking at today's pro wrestling landscape. And now, here's your host, Scott Criscolo.
Place to Be Nation, welcome back to your home for everything wrestling. From one end of the globe to the other, North Pole to South Pole, Kakalaki to Minneapolis. That's where we're going to be tonight. Place to Be Nation's Main Event. I am your co-host, Scott Criscolo. Tremendous show this evening. We've got a lot of great guests. We're going to talk a lot of wrestling from all over the globe. Well, I don't know about the globe. We'll see. But first, let me bring in my co-host. He is, of course, the co-host of the Kings of Sport. He is also as valuable to me as a guy that shares the number episode tonight, the great Lavernius Coles. Brother Nate Milton, the Godfather.
What's going on, Scotty? It is great to be back for another installment of the Main Event. And, you know, with so much going on in the country and the world, you know, people are feeling like they need to go to the mental health ward or maybe the infirmary ward. But since this is episode 87 of the Main Event, I think we're all going to check in to the Diedrich ward this week.
Yes! I was waiting for a good one. Let's see. It is, of course, episode 87, which means we've got ourselves little Eric Decker.
Yes.
You can figure out where that name came from. We got some little Dwight Clark, a former 49er great who I totally forgot when I was watching the Cowboy game Sunday, battling Lou Gehrig's disease. So always prayers out to the great Dwight Clark, of course, the guy who caught the catch. Broke my heart at 8 years old. Who's the other one? We had another one. I'm trying to avoid using Sidney Crosby and his big disgusting lips. Oh, Gronk. If I'd rather say a Patriot over Sidney Crosby, I'll do it. Of course, Gronk as well. Brother Nate, we got a great show tonight. Let's bring in guest number one. He was supposed to be on 2 weeks ago, but he had a family emergency that fortunately worked out very well, so everything's good. He is a Place to Be Nation contributor, both podcast and written, and he dumped his John Farrell jersey, and then he tried to give me shade about Bill Buckner, but he could suck it. Mr. Chris Jordan. What's up, Chris?
How's it going, fellas? It's good to be back on the show, man. It's been a while.
It has been a while. It's good to have you back, man. It's good to have you back.
And I'm gonna ruin all that goodwill by saying that I was gonna mention Sidney Crosby.
Oh, Christ! Nobody likes him.
I was just about to compliment Chris. I was gonna say he was a Lorenzo Diamond in the rough, but now that's all out the window. It's gone.
All right, we're just getting started.
Getting started. All right, gentlemen.
The grass is your teal greener on the other side of the fence.
Just teal greener. Speaking of teal, little Thursday night hoops. Thursday night football action right now down in Baltimore. Close to your neck of the woods, Brother Nate. The Ravens hosting Miami. It's 10-0 Ravens as we speak. Let's, of course, gentlemen, dive in. We'll talk flamethrower first. And we'll begin, of course, with what happened Sunday night in Minneapolis at the Target Center. And it was the Raw pay-per-view known as TLC. And it has actually been a very active week in WWE, but mostly kind of a very heated debate week in terms of creative directions and such. As we leave TLC, we'll talk about it. And then, of course, as we look ahead to November 19th in the Planet Houston and the 30th Survivor Series. Quick recap of the matches from that show. Of course, on the pre-show, Sasha Banks defeated Alicia Fox on the pre-show. Asuka made her debut. She beat Emma. Cedric Alexander and Rich Swann beat Gentleman Jack Gallagher and the Brian Kendrick in a tag match. Alexa Bliss retained her Raw Women's title over Mickie James. Enzo Amore became a two-time Cruiserweight champion, defeating Kalisto. The Demon, Finn Balor, defeated AJ Styles in probably the match of the night. Jason Jordan defeated Elias in a controversial finish, which kind of made no sense. We'll get to that. And in the main event, the 5-on-3 TLC handicap match, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and the pinch-hitting Kurt Angle defeated The Miz, Cesaro, Sheamus, Braun Strowman, and Kane. What? We got a lot to talk about, guys. Brother Nate, just before we dive in specifically, general observations, one or two things you caught in general on the pay-per-view Sunday.
I thought it was a solid show, much better than I had anticipated going in to the weekend. And I've got some issues with some decisions that were made. Granted, we all know the circumstances going into the show with Roman and Bray and others not being available. So I don't fault them too harshly because they were making a decision under duress. It wasn't the ideal situation, but there were some things I would have changed, and there were some things while enjoyable, like Kurt Angle's return or AJ Styles and Finn Balor. I think I would have held them off in a perfect world for a different time.
I think it's pretty obvious. Unfortunately, of course, we had a health issue that led to all of these pinch hittings. Kind of like, I believe if I remember correctly, it was Great American Bash 2006, which was known as the Liver Enzyme pay-per-view. TLC 2017 will forever be known as the HEP pay-per-view. HEP pay-per-view, as like 40 people have hepatitis, which just really creeps me out for some strange reason. No Roman Reigns. No one in the Rotundo family. What did IRS, what did he bang some whore? I don't know what the deal was, but Bo Dallas had it. Bray Wyatt had it. Roman Reigns had it. A couple other people did too. Obviously, the two big ones were Bray and Roman because it actually impacted huge matches on the show. Chris, general observations of Sunday.
Yeah, overall, I thought it was an enjoyable show. It didn't really have the big show feel to it that it could have had because of the replacements. I thought maybe it kind of had that house show feel with last minute replacements. Really, I think there was no context to the replacements. Just say, hey, everyone's sick, so here's some guys filling in. But I enjoyed it for what it was, and couldn't complain too much. And not very memorable overall, but enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody went in kind of with moderate expectations, and then of course the big news that happened on Friday, last Friday, when it was announced Kurt Angle in his first pay-per-view match since, and I was just trying to think right now, I believe One Night Stand 06 when he beat Randy Orton at Hammerstein. I think that was his last one, right? He didn't wrestle in the two show, right? Because the Bash was in July. That was the Liver Enzyme show. Yeah, I think One Night Stand 06 was Kurt's last WWE pay-per-view match. He beat Randy Orton in Vengeance. Vengeance, Orton beat him back. That's right. I'm sorry. Randy Orton and Kurt wrestled twice in June of 06. Once at One Night Stand at Hammerstein, which Kurt won, and then once at Vengeance 06 in... Was that in Raleigh? No. Where was that show? Anyway, Orton won the rematch, and then Kurt left. And then by October, he was at Bound for Glory in October. Was that Sting Jarrett, Nate, right? Was that Sting Jarrett at Bound for Glory 06?
That sounds about right. That sounds,
and Kurt was like the special...
Yeah. And then...
We could ask Jeff Jarrett right now, but he's not taking any visitors.
Yeah. Well, then we'd get into the great Joe Angle series. So,
yes.
Yeah, Kurt, it's crazy that all of that in WWE canon never happened.
Right. I was close. I said Raleigh. Vengeance 06 was actually in Charlotte, so I was close. Same state. You're right. And then 07 is like Genesis, right? He had the first match with Joe, and then everything went from there. All right. Let's throw out some individual discussions. Let's start with Asuka. Wins her debut, beats Emma, and then she beat her the next night on Raw. Both matches moderately long. I mean, the match at the pay-per-view was 9:25, and then they wrestled the next night on Raw, and that was probably slightly shorter, maybe like 6 or 7 minutes. Both good matches. Asuka wins, but already we're starting to get this weird tone that she's already plain. She's boring. Oh, all of her luster has failed. I'm thinking to myself, what does that even mean? Chris, do you think that Asuka is like not, and she hasn't even lost. She's wrestled 2 matches and she's won. So do you think already after a week, in your opinion, or in a couple days, has Asuka already lost her luster?
No, absolutely not. I disagree with that. I think, everyone's used to seeing her in NXT where she was just a wrecking machine, undefeated. She went out as the champ. She had to get hurt for them to take the belt off of her. They've done quite a bit for her with the hype packages. And, they're not doing that for no reason. So, I mean, she comes in to face Emma. People think it's going to be like a 30-second destruction. But this is the main stage now. So you got to, I don't know, you got to stretch these matches out and, make everybody, I mean, it's almost like people think everyone's on the same level, but I think with Asuka, I mean, the luster's still there. It's not gone.
No, there's no doubt.
They've definitely got plans for her and, beating Emma twice. She's still undefeated, so, I mean, I don't see it. I don't see what the big complaint is. Emma looked good in the match. I mean, Asuka gave her plenty of offense, and it was a pretty decent match overall, but in the end, Emma didn't stand a chance, and
no,
I just don't see it. I don't see what the big hullabaloo's about here. So Asuka is still good.
She's fantastic, brother Nate. We're talking about here's the. Well, give me your thoughts. Do you think? And then I got another comment to kind of keep going with it. But what are your thoughts? I mean, I don't know if you've heard about it, but we've definitely heard from people who have said that she should have beat Emma in like a minute. I'm like, come on. But what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think, I think the problem was putting her with Emma, which is somebody that they have recently began to put more stock in. And so it becomes a question of, we've done a lot to build up Emma, and we're also trying to introduce this new character. So it wouldn't make sense to throw away the work we've done with Emma for this new character. So I think there was a mistake putting her in with Emma to begin with. I do think it would have been more impactful had she come in and just killed somebody. And then you could go the next night on Raw, Emma stepping up. I want my fanfare. I want my hashtag or whatever. And we get a good long match. But I didn't have too much of a problem with it, A, because they've been doing work building up the character of Emma. But also, again, this goes back to people being out. I think the reason it went 10 minutes is because we needed a couple extra minutes to fill, given that we don't have Roman, given that we don't have Bray, given that these matches are going to go, I think the main event probably went longer than it was originally intended to, because we had a lot of time to fill with some of these key players missing.
Well, I'll get into the main event in a minute because I don't know maybe Jeff Jarrett booked it after a bender because I don't know what the hell that was wrong with the main event, but I'll get to that in a minute. Because here's the problem. Everybody wants their cake and they also want to eat it too. They want competitive women's divisions, but they want almost all of them to be dominant wins. When we had the brand split last year, the big problem on Raw was that it was Sasha, Charlotte, and everybody else. And we got 5 straight Sasha Charlotte pay-per-view matches or something. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not that much.
Yeah.
I mean, Sasha won the title on all the Raws, and Charlotte won the title on all the pay-per-views. And eventually, we were like, well, what about the rest of the women in the division? It ended up being trash. And I still sometimes feel like, which is why your girl Nia Jax is probably pissed off, and we'll get to that in a minute. And I still think they're trying to dig themselves out of it a little bit, to be quite honest with you. So in comes Asuka, who, if they wanted her to be a babyface, they put her on the right show. If they wanted her to be a heel, they should have put her on SmackDown. But they obviously want her as a babyface. And right now, I don't think you can have Charlotte and Asuka on the same show. Now, there's history with Emma, Nate, because if everyone remembers, when Asuka debuted in NXT in the fall of 2015, who were her first two, who were her first feuds with? Dana Brooke and Emma.
Yep.
So, and of course nobody mentions it because they're fucking stupid, but they should have said something, and I doubt Michael Cole did because he's a pasty schlub. What the hell's wrong with Michael Cole? He looks like glue now. What happened to him? He's all pasty face now. He looks gross. Anyway, he should grow like the Tom. Well, we don't like Tom Phillips either. We wish he would.
He's the glue holding Raw together.
Yeah. Awful. When I say
every team needs a glue guy.
That's right. So, do you think there's an issue here, Chris, between having a dominant force squashing people, or having Asuka have to work a little bit, but then you get competitive? You get a competitive women's division. Like with her, was her being that good in NXT causing a problem on the main roster?
Well, it was causing a problem on NXT for sure because there was no one else in the NXT women's division that could compete with Asuka.
Right.
We thought Ember Moon was going to be it, but she even beat her. But coming up on the main stage, it's kind of like coming up the main stage. It's kind of like getting promoted to the big leagues. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You need that image, that portrayal of there's stiffer competition here. So booking her in a 10-minute match with Emma is probably it's a good introduction. A lot of I hate to say, in this, I don't know how many of the casual fans checking out the main shows are watching both Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. And so, I mean, who knows how many people are actually familiar with Asuka from her days in NXT, other than, us hardcore internet nerds. But I really think having her in a competitive match with Emma is a good way to introduce her. There's more time for her to show off a moveset. There's by the same token, you get someone like Emma who can actually, try to hold her ground and maybe show off a little bit more than she's used to doing, and like the end result, I can't complain about the end result because it was a surprisingly good match considering, I'm not the biggest Emma fan, but she held her own, she looked great, and I really think when you're on the main stage, Raw or SmackDown, it's just a different ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
See, I like that idea. But I think there's two things that would have made that work for me, because I think it was Graves that was actually trying to tell that point, Chris, on the broadcast, that this is a different level. This is a different stage when you go from NXT to the main roster. And those two things are, I think if we're going to tell that story, I wish she would have dropped the belt to Ember Moon on the way out of NXT. And then two, I wish they were more consistent because this is also a show where you have Paige win the women's title on her first night in, where you have the Shield kind of run roughshod through people. And so I don't know if, I'm trying to remember. And I was thinking the night of the show, have they told this story before of the person coming up from NXT facing that challenge and kind of, having to adjust to the fastball, so to speak. And I was like, I don't know if they really told that story. It's a good story to tell, and I wouldn't mind if that's the story that they're trying to tell with Asuka. It's just that they haven't, to my recollection, attempted that before.
Yeah, and right now we don't have time to have Asuka, continue to try to squash, because there's nobody to squash left. You're not going to ever squash Bayley.
That's the other thing, though. The women's division on Raw is pretty much like the cruiserweight division. Outside of whatever your title story is, everyone else is just kind of there.
Right. And it's obvious that Asuka's the one that's going to beat Alexa. There's no doubt. I mean, that's pretty much etched in stone. It's a question of how far do we stretch it? Do they do it at Survivor Series? Do they do it at the Rumble? Because those are the next two opportunities. Because the December pay-per-view is a SmackDown show, so it won't happen there. Or do they just wait till New Orleans? Who knows? I can't see Alexa holding it. Well, I guess I can. You can't really guess. Conventional wisdom when it comes to wrestling booking obviously goes out the window at this stage of the evolution of WWE. But I mean, do you think, Nate, that had she just dropped it to Ember Moon out the door, she'd still have the luster? What is keeping her undefeated going to do? She's going to have to lose eventually.
Yeah.
So why didn't she just drop it to Ember Moon in Miami. I mean, in Orlando.
Yep.
And just be done with it.
Yeah, and then you could set up, Ember Moon versus Kairi Sane,
right?
Heading out of that, and that to me that move would have helped both NXT and also it wouldn't have hurt Asuka because
no, not at all.
As Chris mentioned, I don't know what the crossover is between your casual Raw viewer and your NXT viewer, but as we've seen with NXT call-ups, it can go one of two ways, and so I don't we could have the great examples that we've seen, like the guys in the Shield, or we've got a Bayley, or we've got
Adam Rose.
the Ascension, Adam Rose, the Ascension. So I don't think that it would have hurt Asuka. My only fear, though, and again, this goes back to I think our discussion about Nakamura on episode 86. I hope that they don't drop the ball, and not that Nakamura is a project beyond repair or beyond reheating. But I hope that they don't drop the ball on her just because English is not her strongest suit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what you're always worried about, is when Triple H's NXT people, talent come up to the big roster, and then the old man looks at him and goes,
"Yeah,
she can't speak," which is hopefully why Nakamura is not in the position he's in, which is not terrible, but we'll get to knock on another show because we're talking about Raw tonight. All right. Speaking of Alexa Bliss, she beats Mickie James. That match goes 11-25, and is actually a very good match. I mean, there's a case, I think, Nate, where you were talking about kind of stretching the time a little bit, because I don't think Alexa and Mickie were meant to go 11 and a half minutes. Maybe 7 minutes probably, or 8, but I don't know about 11 and a half. That's a bit much. I know it's two different examples, but this is what I think. A lot of people thought that I've seen thought that Mickie should have won. The whole she's too old, blah 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 blah.
Right.
But it seems like they're stretching the storyline out anyway. We'll get more into that in a minute. I almost equate this, without the overt racism, to the Triple H Booker T storyline going into WrestleMania 19, because had it not been for the pending or impending debut of Goldberg, I think Booker was going to win at WrestleMania 19. I really do. But they had the whole thing about, Goldberg's here, blah, 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 and, that's the guy that's got to beat indomitable Triple H. So, sorry, Booker, you're just collateral damage. I almost think this case is the same. Had we not had Asuka in the wings, I think Mickie might have won Sunday. But you don't want to have her lose and kind of kill Alexa's luster before getting to Asuka. What do you think, Nate? Am I out of bounds kind of on the comparison?
No, I totally agree. And I think that, again, both the Booker feud and also the Sting feud heading into WrestleMania, I'm like, I don't have a problem with Triple H winning, but if he's going to win, don't tell me that story. When you talk about Booker, like, don't tell me the story where the racist ends up winning. That's not a satisfying conclusion to most people.
I know.
But I think with Mickie and Asuka, there's fertile ground for a story with Mickie getting redemption, but I don't think redemption necessarily means she has to ultimately win the belt. Particularly when, we've talked about this before, Scotty. Alexa, to me, has earned the right to be the one to lose to Asuka, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Because she's been so good on the microphone. You could argue she's been the best female character, certainly on Raw, maybe in the company, notwithstanding Asuka's work in NXT, and her in-ring work has been improving. So I think Alexa's earned the right to hold the belt until Asuka ultimately defeats her. And, as much as I love me some Mickie James, I did not think for one second that, they were going to pull the trigger and give the title to Mickie.
What do you think, Chris? If Asuka was not in the wings, would Mickie have won Sunday?
No, I don't think so. I think,
really? Okay.
Yeah, really. I think talk about Alexa Bliss for a second because, we remember her down in NXT in the early days as the skipping, bubbly blonde cheerleader type. And
Yep.
the heel turn really did wonders for her. And then to go along with that, she's busted her ass to look good in the ring, too. So she's improved by leaps and bounds, and I think she's earned her current position, and she deserves to hang on to it. And, yeah, I mean, if Asuka's the one that they're pushing here, then it's definitely a right that Alexa has earned to drop the title to the hot newcomer Asuka. And I think I think Mickie James is a solid hand in the ring, but I think she's just really there to as like talent enhancement. She's there to make Alexa look even stronger by taking out the old vet.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's good analysis. I kind of think she was supposed to win. However, with Raw, when she attacked her on Raw, maybe she was meant to lose, and then maybe they'll face each other at Survivor Series, or we got a couple of Raws till then anyway, so maybe they'll rematch. But Alexa's been a tremendous champion. I know she did lose to Sasha, but Sasha's kind of rarefied air right now, so losing to her doesn't hurt anybody in any way.
No.
So, a lot of people, including myself, as everybody knows, hates Enzo, and now everyone is jumping on my bandwagon of hating him because I hated him 3 years ago. But he, believe it or not, I can't believe I'm about to say this. He's kind of growing on me a little bit as a bad guy with the Zoe train and all these clowns trying to do their. I mean, Gabagoulis is trying to do his lines because Enzo had the throat problem was actually pretty funny. He beat Kalisto and then he won. He lost the rematch by DQ, but he's still Cruiserweight champion. But Chris, does it seem like? But apparently Enzo has not been allowed to walk into a locker room in like a month and a half or something. So, what is the weird situation here? He's being rewarded by being Cruiserweight champion, yet he's still a pariah in the back. What do you think the scoop is there?
Well, I think basically what it is. Enzo, when it was Enzo and Cass, Enzo. He was kind of hit and miss on the mic, but he was mostly used as, to get the crowd hyped because, he can be good on the mic. And so after the split, the heel turn, I think has done wonders for him in terms of heat. Mm-hmm. Because, he's generally hated now, but he's hated from like from a character perspective now, you know what I mean? Yep. Even though we hate him, but we hate him for reasons not related to what they're showing on television. But he's horrible in the ring. I will admit, I'm not a fan of his ring work, but he's really good at playing a shitbag heel, and I think that's where he needs to stay. And I think that's being recognized because he's actually generated some interest in 205 Live by putting him on that show. And regardless of what's going on backstage with him, the bottom line is the bottom line. And Enzo is somewhat money on 205 Live.
Yep.
How'd that happen, Nate?
It happened for a couple of reasons. I think, you've got somebody who, while not an entirely likable human being, and this might be a weird correlation, but I've been watching a lot of 2000 era WCW Nitros for my show with Brian Mann.
That's right.
And one of the things I keep seeing week after week is, as much as I don't like him and as much as I think he was a detriment overall to the wrestling industry, Vince Russo is a hell of a performer. Like, when he's playing a character, Vince Russo is very engaging and entertaining. And I say a lot of that in Enzo. Like, I wouldn't want to hang out with Enzo. I wouldn't want to be friends with Enzo. But in a division and on a show, 205 Live, where you have such a lack of star power, particularly now that Neville's gone, Enzo to me just stands out, and the heel turn works so well for him. And I think that it's so much better now for him as a character that we can have right and license to hate him instead of them trying to stuff him down our throats as a babyface when he was with Cass. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is he is somebody, like Chris said, that draws eyeballs, puts figurative, and maybe even literal butts in the seats when it comes to 205 Live. And I think that when you have that guy on the show, he makes everybody else better just by virtue of him being a threat, him being a heel, because, these are some great wrestlers, but a year and some change into this experiment, how much do we know about the character of Rich Swann or the character of TJP or the character of Drew Gulak or the character of any of these performers other than Enzo? And so I think having him there as a target and as an ally for some, depending on which side of the fence they're on, it just helps everybody else out by having his presence. So yeah, not a great guy, but certainly a great character in the role he's in right now.
And I mean, I think a lot of cruiserweights are probably like, this guy sucks. It's like watching Big John Studd as a cruiserweight or something, and I love Big John Studd. But I mean, but you could argue, gentlemen, that Enzo is the cruiserweight version of Jinder Mahal. True or false? He's a champion who knows that he fucking can't wrestle. So what's he going to do? Cheat to keep his belt. Reminds me of somebody else. I'm telling you, Nate, you're not going to get me to stop. Not going to get me to stop. Your official podcast of the modern day Maharaja. But we're not going to talk about him tonight because this is Raw.
So instead of the modern day Maharaja, what you're saying is Enzo is the Staten Island Swami.
Yes. And it seems like his tights are velour, so I'm good with. Yes. I think I'm kind of good with that too. All right. Finn Balor and AJ Styles had a tremendous match. Second longest match of the night at 18:20. Did it live up to the Shawn Michaels-ish hype? No. Somebody said, that match was better than any of AJ's matches with Cena. That is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
AJ's best match in WWE was last year at SummerSlam with Cena. And has he gotten close to it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. But has he surpassed that match? I don't think so. What did you think of that match, Chris? And was it AJ's best match? We will talk about Finn in a minute, but was it AJ's best match in the company to this point?
Oh, no, it was not. I agreed. His series with Cena probably the best we've seen from AJ. But this was a fine match, and it was match of the night. The problem I have with it, of course, is Finn Balor still coming out with the demon paint on, even though it's not Bray Wyatt that he's facing anymore. And that was the whole point of the match to begin with, was the demon versus Sister Abigail. But and with that wiped out, I mean, just the whole demon thing, I think, to me is played. It's really I don't care if I ever see the demon paint ever again, really. So we should have just had straight up, Finn versus AJ straight up, which basically was what it was. But it was still a great match, and just the random choice of pulling a SmackDown guy onto a Raw show for a one-off match like that was still a surprise. But I think we got what we paid for, so to speak. Got our $9.99 worth.
Well, first off, it couldn't have just been Finn versus AJ, because that, if I'm not mistaken, Scott, that's a man versus man match, and you got to build up to that gimmick.
Oh, no, I agree. No, that I agree with. I don't know why he went to I don't know why he stuck with. Maybe because he already painted it. I don't know. I kind of agree with that. Maybe they thought the fans wanted the demon, but.
Well, the demon has been devalued. Like, there's no question the demon has been devalued. And I think this, while a great match, and I think it could have been another match that they probably could have gone longer with, even though I think they went longer with AJ and Finn than they had planned to go with Finn and Bray. I still think they could have done, another 5 minutes easily, and it still would have been just as sweet or too sweet, as it were. But no, this wasn't AJ's best match like the Cena match. I'd even throw in one of those Roman matches because I thought those were really good.
Both Roman matches were exceptional, actually.
Yeah, I thought, the matches he had with Roman were really good.
Yeah.
But this was a good match. But again, like I talked about off the top, while I understand why they went with this, I think this is another match you could have saved for later and had it mean more, even though it was a nice, cool little surprise. I think it could have meant more on a different stage.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I disagree with you on, I don't think the Demon's devalued. I don't think so. I think we've seen it. We haven't seen it too much. I mean, I saw it live at SummerSlam in Brooklyn, and it was awesome. It may have
maybe it's just that him having that character involved with Bray Wyatt has made it feel less than.
Probably, but I don't think it's devalued though. I don't think it's that level yet. Hopefully it never does.
I think sorry guys.
No, go ahead, Chris, go ahead.
I think we could start an angle here where Finn Balor only wins matches when he puts the paint on.
Well, then Nate will really get pissed off because then he'll be wearing it at house shows. Or he'll be on episodes of Superstars.
He'll be on the Today Show with demon makeup on.
Now, Finn, and I'm telling you, I'm still putting my money on the table. Finn is still going to win the Rumble. I'm keeping with it. I said it. I remember in 2011 going into 2012. I said for 6 months that Sheamus was going to win the Rumble, and he did, and that's how I feel. I feel that right now. I still think Finn's going to win the Rumble. I do. Because I have a feeling he may switch shows. I think what we need to realize is just because, who's to say that because Finn may be due for a change of scenery. However, they really haven't mentioned that he still kind of has a match in his back pocket to get his Universal title back, if they really give a shit. You know what I mean? So, we'll see. But I thought the match was very good. I mean, they were stiff. They were throwing each other around. But it was not AJ's best match in the company. His best match in the company for me is still Cena at SummerSlam. All right. Kurt Angle pinch hits for Roman, which honestly I thought was kind of unnecessary. He didn't do a boatload. Obviously, the 2/3 Shield won the match. I don't know if I doubt either of you have it in front of you. I'll start with you, Chris. How long do you think the main event was?
I'm going to put it in the range of somewhere between 35 and 40 minutes.
Okay. Nate?
Let's go Price is Right rules, and I'll go 35:01.
35-25. Nate wins the camper and the bedroom set. Chris, you get the exercise bike and the shag carpet.
Son of a bitch.
But it felt, I mean, and Greeny was with me watching it with a few people. It felt like it was about fucking 75 minutes. I mean, it was brutal. I understand, and you had mentioned earlier, Nate, about filling time, but some of the portions of this match, mostly involving Kane, just got fucking out of hand. They got out of hand. Let's break it down into two parts. We'll talk about Kurt in a minute. Obviously, they had this thing going on with Kane was going to do something with Braun Strowman. I would say like 11 of the 35 minutes was any of the Kane-Braun bullshit that ate up way too much time. There was a lot of standing around and everything. And now we don't know what the deal is with Braun. Is he hurt? Is this repackaging him to be a good babyface? What were they gaining by this, Nate, with this Kane-Braun interaction? Like, what do you think the end game is here? That Braun beats him? Who gives a shit?
Well, yeah, I think that's exactly the end game. We've got to have something for Braun to do. You know, we've elevated him to this main event level, and coming off of the loss to Brock, we got to give this guy something to do. And what better thing, I guess, in their infinite wisdom to get him to do than to fight the Devil's favorite mayoral candidate, and that is Kane.
Yes. But I mean, this is really the best they could do. I guess. I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
Well, the whole adding Kane to the match out of nowhere, you had to know something was up. And I wasn't surprised when he and Braun Strowman started turning on each other. I kind of sort of saw it happening. And now, of course, we know about the fallout from Raw and everything, what's going on there. It's just going to continue. But,
right.
Yeah, you're right, though. I mean, the beginning of the match was hot. The ending of the match was kind of hot. And then we had, like, the 25 minutes in the middle that totally sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. Kane is... it's time to put him out to pasture, of course. It's been...
I thought he was. I think he just returned from the pasture.
I thought he was. I mean, shit. He came back from the pasture, man. He's laying fucking cow patties everywhere in terms of...
Well, he dropped the cow patty on Seth Rollins' knee, which caused him to miss 8 months or whatever. So
yeah. This doesn't... and of course, Kane is now being built up as the Haas for babyface Braun to take down. I mean, that's what it's all about, is now building up Kane for Braun. And which makes me wonder why the hell they didn't put Braun over Brock Lesnar when they had the chance to, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to keep Brock strong for gender.
Well, duh. Gender got in the way of Braun's advancement, yes.
All roads lead to gender.
All roads lead to gender. Well, duh. I would have thought that I think Brock would have been a good replacement for Seth, and then somebody said, "Well, he's got his dates. You write him out a check." I don't want. I'm tired of that excuse now. He's only got so many dates. Write him a check. As we saw today in the third quarter report, and we're going to talk about that on our next show in 2 weeks. We'll talk about the WWE third quarter report. They got the money for it. Yeah. Write out a check. PayPal him. I don't know. I mean,
that's a great idea. And then you would have, you could have continued the Brock Braun feud, right. And then you could have saved Kurt Angle's return for a more fitting occasion.
Exactly.
And Kurt Angle's return to the ring, I mean, in context, it didn't really make any sense because he's the Raw GM, and now all of a sudden he's got license to, put his employees, his staff through tables. And and of course, the next night on Raw, there's no fallout from that. So, I mean, I think that whole angle, adding Kurt Angle to the match, was it just needed a little bit more context, and there wasn't any. It's like, here's Kurt Angle, and it kind of took me out of it. I mean, the match itself, it was overlong, and there were some highlights to it, and Angle, looked good in his segments, but it's just, it just didn't make any sense.
No, and obviously they had to get things going the next night on SmackDown, or next night on Raw with the Survivor Series build. So it was like, all right, well, whatever. We're going to have to deal with more Kane than we probably ever wanted to. Now, obviously these guys are going to have to come back soon. The Roman and Bray and all that. They're obviously going to have to come back at some point. Hopefully they're healing up. So we get out of TLC. And the next night on Raw, we begin this weird storyline where, Kurt's breaking Shane's stones and they're goofing with each other about, the Survivor Series and, brand versus brand. Then all of a sudden, Shane comes out with, at the end, and all of a sudden, the whole SmackDown roster comes out. and they just decimate everybody on Raw and end the show. A lot of people weren't thrilled about that. There's some people that I've heard that said this didn't make any sense. Why are they acting like heels? Why should they give a crap about their brand? What did you think of that, Nate? Kind of turning the page to the Survivor Series storyline, and now you've got smacked. Like everyone's like, "Oh, Becky Lynch, why is she acting like such a bitch?" And why is Natalia buddying up to the girls that she hates and all this? Are we getting too are we not allowing kayfabe to breathe anymore? You know, I thought we were all saying that creative needs to think outside the box. Should they just do Raw versus Raw guys, SmackDown versus SmackDown guys, and then everybody could complain that it's really boring? I mean, is there a third option for Survivor Series? Like, what do you do? You know,
I think I'm of two minds on this, because I think in the moment watching on night, I really enjoyed the closing segment. I thought that it was impactful. I thought that it really kind of kickstarted Survivor Series season, if you will. I enjoyed the visual of the entire or the majority of the roster coming down the steps with Shane, and I liked seeing them go backstage and run roughshod over people. But I understand, you know, when people say, what are the reasons for this? And that's why on Tuesday I was hoping for a little more explanation than we got, and I'm still hoping we get a little more explanation. Like, what's at stake? Like, there's little things that just feel a little bit off. Like, why would Gable attack Jordan? Like, give me some backstory on that. Or why do we have Bobby Roode standing right next to Dolph Ziggler? Or why is Shinsuke Nakamura happy about some PA getting beat up when Nak doesn't seem like he'd hang out with any of these jabronis if he wasn't on the same roster with them? So I like the angle. I think it's a great way to kick off a Survivor Series, which feels more red versus blue than we've seen in a long time. You know, we had the big match last year, but for the most part, it felt like the brand war, quote unquote, was a secondary option or a secondary function of the pay-per-view, whereas this one is front and center, and I really like that. I just wish we'd gotten a little bit more rationale from Shane, because this feels out of character for Shane McMahon.
Yes,
or at least
I agree.
the Shane McMahon we've seen for the last couple months. It feels a little out of character, so I just need a little more filling in of the lines, and they've got time to do that. So I'm holding out hope that they'll fill us in a little bit more on the details.
Okay, what do you think, Chris?
Well, I'm with Nate in saying that I enjoyed the segment. It was very interesting. It's a lot more interesting than a lot of the stuff I've seen on TV lately, and it kept me glued. So it worked from that perspective. And at the same time, probably another angle that could have used some context a little bit, maybe some build over the previous weeks, kind of leading up to this, kind of like the big blow-off happening at Survivor Series. So maybe we could have had a few run-ins on each show. I don't know. But then, of course, they're trying to keep the brands separate, so which they've done a very good job of since the split. But I really I kind of like where it's going, because it kind of adds some intensity to the whole thing, rather than just have 5 Raw guys versus 5 SmackDown guys, and women as well in this case. But and just throwing them in the ring together, you kind of add a little intensity and heat to the match by having something like this occur. And Raw is going to retaliate, and I think the anticipation of that retaliation, and which is why they didn't, do anything on this week's SmackDown. They're going to build to that, and I think it's just going to create a little bit more for the big blow-off at Survivor Series.
Yeah, I want to give it some time to breathe before we flush it down the toilet. But the problem is we need some kind of legit. We need some kind of legit prize.
Yes,
and I think it should be the winning brand gets to take a guy or girl from the losing brand. And that's where I think SmackDown wins and takes Finn.
Not a bad idea.
That's my idea. If
Or
Raw
Vinny.
wins, then you can have a storyline. If Raw wins, then you can have a storyline where Kevin Owens tries to petition to be picked because remember he hates SmackDown, he hates Shane, he wants to go back to Raw. You could open the door and have some cool storylines for that.
Yeah.
So, all right, Chris Jordan, you're awesome. Thanks for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
What do you got coming up
yeah.
on the pipeline? You of course do a lot for PlayStationNation.com. What do you got?
Well, of course, my podcast, Go Home in a Box, where we talk about movies. We've recently started adding a few newer films to the mix, but we're still mainly talking about, our old, favorites from the VHS era, which is always fun to talk about. I've got another episode coming up this week with my partner, Joel LaPuma, the Ayatollah of pop cultura, I call him. And he's full of knowledge. He's a great co-host, and so that's coming down the pipe. Next week we try to get one done, every week as we can, but every now and then life intervenes. We have to bump it back and all that stuff. So we got that going on. Oh, and Scotty, you need to know, man, where there's rumblings of a Place to Be Nation baseball podcast starting up.
I have heard about that. Yes.
Between myself and Mr. Joel Barnhart, and Greenie's involved as well. And
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
So everyone keep their ears open for that to happen, and we're going to have some rotating guests, of course, and we're in the talking state of it now, and we hope to have something more concrete here in the next few weeks, because we're trying to get a hot stove session going.
Love it, because all of our teams need to fire the stove up. It's gonna be I think it's gonna be a juicy off season. I really do.
Yeah. So so you can definitely look forward to something like that happening very soon.
Well, I was saying the other day that at least for our part of the country, at least my part of the country, I think this is the first. Actually, it is the first. I think Greenie looked it up. This is the first time ever that the Yankees, Red Sox, and Mets will all start a season with new managers. Never happened before.
That is interesting.
So for this part of the country, big deal. And then, of course, Nate's part of the country, you've got the Nats need a manager. And, well, the Orioles probably need a new manager. Sorry, Buck. Chris Jordan, always a pleasure, brother. We'll have you back on again very soon.
Thank you very much.
Brother Nate, let's take a break here on Main Event. When we return, Big Pete's going to be in the house. Pete Schirmacher will join us. Pete was at the CWF Mid-Atlantic Con a couple weeks ago, and he's been happy enough to join us and talk about the weekend and see how much fun he had with our man Stutzy and the rest of the gang down there, and look ahead to anything else going on around the world in professional wrestling. So, Brother Nate, Brother Scott, Big Pete, next. Main Event.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hey, pro wrestling announcer Kevin Kelly here. I want to make sure you are all subscribed to all the great feeds here at Place to Be Nation. It's really easy to do. Just head to iTunes or your preferred podcatcher app today and search and subscribe to the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, which of course includes the full archives of the Kevin Kelly Show, the Place to Be Nation pod feed, and the Pro Wrestling Only feed. Subscribe, listen, and then rate us and leave feedback today. And be sure to give Justin your true thoughts. I mean, don't hold back. After all, he is kind of a jerk. Just listen to Scott.
Place to Be Nation's JT Rosero and Chad Campbell here. We want to let you know that we have a ton of great podcasts available to you on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlayStation.com, and we offer those to you on 3 great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, we bring you the Mothership, the original Place to Be podcast, as well as Main Event, Lucha Afterground, and our monthly pay-per-view reaction shows, as well as the Our Vantage Point podcast and Jeff Learns Wrestling. In addition to these full-length shows, we also deliver quick-hit pod blasts on topics old and new.
Over on the Pro Wrestling Only feed, we dive deep inside the wrestling business with a stacked army of experts leading the way. The feed features potpourri shows such as This Week in Wrestling, Greetings from Allentown, Psychology is Dead, Puro Puri, Stacy and Elliot's Bogus Journey, and the Military Industrial Suplex. We also have shows that focus intently on certain topics like Letters from Center Stage, Space City, and NWA Classics on Demand Adventure, Through the Years, Strong Style History, Strong Style Story, and Mount Olympus. Plus, the feed has the full archives of legendary shows like Titans of Wrestling, Where the Big Boys Play, Letters from Kayfabe, and much more. And on our popular Place to Be Nation Pop podcast feed, we offer such great shows as the Glenn Butler Podcast Hour Spectacular, Rank and File, PTBN Dadcast, Go Home in a Box, NBA Team, and Lucha Undead, as well as a veritable podcast heaven for comics fans with the Hard Traveling Fanboys, Sellers Points, Todd Weber's Conversation, Geek and Sassy, and Imaginary Stories podcasts.
You can find all of these current shows plus archives of our past podcasts, including The Kevin Kelly Show, as well by subscribing to all of our feeds on iTunes, and while there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others available on PlaceToBeNation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus in-depth stretch projects and more. Be sure to support our site by using PlaceToBeNation.com/Amazon when shopping online, and download our free PTB Vintage Vault Refresh ebooks via the links on our site. We also want to thank our friends at Bonehead's Wing Bar in West Warwick, Rhode Island, and Fall River, Massachusetts, TheHistoryOfWrestling.com, and Scott Keats' Blog of Doom. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
We are back on Place to Be Nation's main event, episode number 87. So for all of our listeners in the northeastern part of the country, this is the Britt Selleck episode. But for our southern listeners, and particularly our Atlanta contingent, this is the Burt Emanuel episode. And the reason I bring up Burt Emanuel, besides the fact that he was also one of my favorite players, is not only was he a good receiver, but he was an excellent kick returner and punt returner. And you need specialists to really get a team going. And that's why we decided to bring in our resident specialist when it comes to the vast world of non-WWE professional wrestling. He is the Oracle of the Indies. He is the virtual encyclopedia of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And he's just a generally all-around good guy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Pete Schirmacher. Brother Pete, how are we doing this week?
Hey, doing fantastic. How's it going, brother?
Doing good. Scotty and I were just spending the break perusing the CWF website and getting excited for the upcoming Explosive Element show and envisioning Brother Stutz as a hard-drinking detective on these mean streets being harassed by his chief, Reginald Bell Johnson. But that's neither here nor there, Pete. We're getting off on a tangent here, but we wanted to have you on this week, not to talk about Stutzy's acting career, but to talk about Stutzy's promotion and the good work that the great people at CWF are doing. So, Pete, just fill us in on your journeys and your travels and what's been going on in your world.
Okay, well, I just got back. It just finally it aired yesterday on the YouTube channel. Was the CWF Rumble. So I actually went down there for that and their fan convention, which I was at Scenic City in September, and John Philippovich, Johnny P, who people might know from the ECW documentary, and Jeremy Bryant were saying, hey, we're going to do a fan con to coincide with CWF Rumble. Are you interested in coming down? I'm like, it was on my bucket list to go this year, so why not? I'll do it in October, which would be the best time for me. And man, what an exciting time! I get in there on a Friday. We get down to the Sportatorium, and it's totally different than I was envisioning. I envisioned like this old decrepit building type of thing, and this is actually, it was just kind of like in a strip mall. Where you go to almost like a baseball card shop, strip mall type of thing, And I'm assuming there's still baseball card shops out there. When I was a kid, there was plenty of them. And we go there. We have a nice Italian dinner in the sportatorium with the people from the convention and the talent. And then Stutzy and Grant do a little Q&A, which I recorded all this Q&A panels down there for CWF, and I put them all up on the Pro Wrestling PTBN site. And it was actually my first time to get in a ring. And so I've never been in a ring. Have you guys ever been in a ring before?
Once
I have
when
been
I
in a
was,
ring. Yeah.
I've been in the ring once when I was really, really young, and it happened after an old NWA show. And so just to be in the same ring where P and News stood, it was one of my career highlights.
Wow, but you have lower expectations than I don't know, than Pete playing the bar owner in the upcoming Cinemax movie. I was actually in a indie ring a long time ago, but it was one of these kind of ones that are held together by gum and spit. So it was probably a WCW or an ECW ring anyway. But I have stood in a ring, and it is pretty cool. It's kind of got a neat feel to it. I agree with you, Pete.
It felt like I was on a boogie board in a way because standing on like water for some reason, and so that was pretty cool. It was the first time I've ever done it, and I did my pretend Royal Rumble. I did my pretend CWF Rumble entrance. But we had a good, we got a good hour and a half, 2 hours of Q&A with Stutzy Grant. We watched some matches on the Jumbotron or the Sawyertron at the Sportatorium with the wrestlers talking about their matches, which was pretty cool. And then that was up till we did that from 7 o'clock to 11 p.m. Then we went back to the hotel, had beers and shoot the shit. We did it straight wrestling style and wrestlers on the road, and there was 5 of us crammed into a hotel room. I'm staying there, and then the next morning I got up. Everyone, we were out drinking till 5 in the morning. And I was only one of my crew to be able to get up in time and make it back to the Sportatorium at 10 in the morning. I got up to eat breakfast and get out to the Sportatorium, and then we had a bunch of panels. We got one with the baby faces. And then we did one with the heels, and then we did a panel with the legends of the company. And that was a lot of fun, a lot of great stories. We heard about Nick Richards, his apartment wrestling gimmick trophy, and all these great stories, all these ribbing stories, background, history. It was real free-forming. Nothing was hidden. Everyone, I can tell you, the whole CWF company was so forthcoming and really made you feel at home. It was really one of the funnest experiences I've ever had. Is they were just so happy when I was telling me I'm from Texas. People are just shocked at what they're doing in North Carolina is getting people willing to fly out to watch their show, and so we did that from 10 to 2, 10 to 3. Then I got hooked up with Bruce Mitchell from Torch and a few other guys, and we went down to Buffalo Wild Wings and had more beers. And then we went to the show, and the actual Rumble itself was an incredible match, and the atmosphere in the building was incredible. One of the funnest shows I've been to in a long, long, long time. The Rumble itself got incredible positive reviews on Twitter. Our boy Chad Campbell said it was his second best. Thought it was the second best match he's seen this year. I have it high. I give it 4.5 stars. Just an incredible storytelling, and especially since there was so much stuff recently on Twitter about Meltzer trolling with PWG stuff, and to see wrestling done with storytelling about characters and having meaning, it was just a great time. And you see me on the damn YouTube thing, and I'm just I know wrestling's a work, but I like to get caught up in everything. And I'm here just going nuts throughout the whole entire show. It hooked me on so many levels, and it was just super cool. And then be able to talk to a lot of the workers afterwards, and then put over how hard they worked, and then they have. There's just so many neat little intricacies and stuff. Like there's a wrestler named Otto Swans, and he doesn't wear a mask or anything, but when he was out after the match, he's wearing this black mask, but he had a shirt that said Otto Swans on it, and it was just absolutely tripping me out. And I'm just staring at him because I thought it was weird. And then later on, he has the mask off, and he comes over and thanks all our crew for coming down from where all we came from, coming down for the convention and supporting the company. So it was just weird. It was like he was in gimmick, and then he kind of wasn't. And I was just mesmerized the whole entire time. And like some of the guys were straight up in gimmick the whole entire weekend. And then there was, everyone was shooting too. So it was just a really blast. But I can't put over how welcoming the company was, and what a great product they put on. It was such a really fun show. It didn't overstay its welcome. I thought it was one of the best Rumbles I'd ever seen in my life. How they were able to build characters. Trevor Lee defending his belt was number one, going through 30 different opponents. Sometimes you see guys just disappear in these bowls. Trevor Lee didn't, except for when it was time for somebody to shine or do a big angle. Then he'd disappear type of thing in it. But man, he just carried that Rumble, and then everyone else had their moments, and it was such. It was just incredible.
Well, Pete, when you talk about the organization, when you talk about the company and the experience that you had when you were out there, a lot of times people will see things, whether it's being talked about or whether it's being posted on social media. And obviously, our boy Stutzy, very active on social media. And, we've had him here on Place to Be Nation a bunch of times. For the person out there that has heard about CWF or maybe seen posts or seen, some clips online, and then they're curious about what makes this promotion so good, can you let the fans know and let the listeners know, man, what is it about CWF that, kind of makes them stand out?
Everything pays off. Everything matters. It's one of the best episodic television shows on TV right now. I think them and NXT are the two best when it comes to doing episodic television. Like sometimes a lot of times on Raw, SmackDown, you might do an angle and it goes nowhere. That doesn't happen here. When they do an angle, they're committed, and it's. I hate that I know they don't like the term old school. They're an old school promotion. They're just a promotion that follows logic, and it makes sense. They build characters. They have Trevor Lee as the champion who puts out world-class title defenses like he's Ric Flair or Ricky Steamboat if he was the Mid-Atlantic champion in the 80s. He gets his 20 to 30-minute time in the matches. He gets time. He doesn't rush things. Everything builds and crescendos. There's so many different characters. They recently did a show in Chapel Hill, and Snooty Fox was like the baby face, and Eric Royal was the big-time heel. They had this really fun brawl, and it was a brass knucks on a pole match. They lay out the babyface, which was Snooty Fox, and this is in Chapel Hill, and they bury him under the Duke flag. And this got so much legit heat where they actually had to wait for the crowd to disperse until
tremendous. Royal
could actually leave the building.
That's tremendous.
Yeah, it got so much heat. If people haven't checked it out, it came across like an old territorial brawl. They kept the weapons to a minimal, so it was all about the hate. And then the bastardly, these women were going nuts for Snooty, and Eric Royal was just egging them on, wasn't hiding from the heat, went after it all 100%, and it was incredible. it just has that feel. They have bowling, they have technical, they have great characters like Ethan Sharp, who's like a Richie Rich, Snudley Whiplash type of character. And you get to see guys start young, like King Justice is like a younger, like Tully Blanchard, who he's like only 20 years old, but in 5 years, when I mean, right now he's really good. I mean, he's amazing for a rookie, and his growth is just going to be great because he's already calling his matches. He understands the business, and if you see the Rumble, he was the last guy in there with Trevor Lee, and Trevor Lee made him this week. Really elevated him from a rookie with a lot of potential to main event player, and now he's made in the CWF territory. The fans have been attached to him, seeing him rise because he's like, there's always it's always cool. It's just like in baseball, if you're able to find that rookie who maybe you debuts and you call him and you just follow his career and you kind of latch on, and that's how a lot of guys are with Kane right now, watching him latch on. They have great gimmicks, like a guy named Dirty Daddy, who's like a throwback to a 1950s wrestler. He wears like double pants. His finisher is the Brain Buster, but it's the old school Brain Buster where it's really like just a suplex. Yeah. So they mix characters with really strong workers. Roy Wilkins is like a technical worker, technical heel, in like a mode of a Dory Funk, but a lot more exciting. Eric Royal is like a modern day Butch Reed. I said Kane's like a modern day Tully Blanchard. You have Trevor Lee. There was the Ricky Steamboat of the promotion. You have a great big monster tag team of the Sandwich Squad, which is they're kind of like Earthquake and Typhoon, except more athletic. And it's just a fun promotion to get behind. The booking makes sense. Even if you know where it's going, sometimes even though you know what the end result's going to be, they'll still take you on make you think you're going left, and they juke you and they go right, but they end up going back to where they wanted to anyway. They just know how to take you on a ride. They don't swerve you just to swerve you. They just know how to really climax. Very rarely am I disappointed in a booking decision on what they do.
And then I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot. Scotty and I talked about what happened with TLC and what happened with Raw in the A block, with Chris. And for all the good that we had, we also had some questions, particularly coming out of that big angle at the end of Raw. And, do all of the dots connect? Does the logic behind these characters' actions make sense? And from what you're saying, it sounds like a lot of care and a lot of time was placed into not just, let's have a match with a lot of flashy moves and some really cool high spots, but let's create a product that actually engages the person in the seats or the person watching at home.
Exactly. They protect things. Like WWE has had a major problem building a new babyface since John Cena. And you could argue, well, Cena gets booed a lot too, but at least he's a babyface and he means a lot to the brand. But they've had a big time problem building somebody like Cena. I mean, it's almost terrifying because he's halfway out the door right now, and they still haven't found that next guy to carry the promotion. And they do it here at CWF. They know how to heat up a babyface. They know how to build a babyface. They get you. Wins and losses matter. You get behind these people, and very rarely do they make mistakes on it. And occasionally they do. Like, I mean, everyone's human. You're not going to be. I've never met the perfect booker, but I mean, you get invested in the climb. It really is. It shows you that you can use a lot of old school tropes, and they matter if you make them matter. And that's what they do. They never treat wrestling like a farce. Very rarely. Everything's treated seriously, and you don't. We've seen it. We've seen it in the WWE. You've seen Dean Ambrose get hot. They chop his legs out from him, and then they expect him to be able to draw 6 months down the road after they've chopped his legs out from him and ripped his arm out of his socket, and they expect him to matter. And it doesn't. I mean, we've seen him get hot and cold, and I think it's one of the funniest things because they do so many shows on the WWE is that all of a sudden, okay, we need a main eventer. Dean Ambrose, come on down. Yeah, we know we beat you the last 5 shows, but we need you in the main event now. I mean, that's not how it works. There's no. I mean, the WWE thinks they have this magic potion, but they've proven they don't because they haven't been able to have a strong babyface really since John Cena. They've had some opportunities, but they chose that they don't feel that they're worthy enough or what have you, even when people get behind them, a la Daniel Bryan or a Cesaro type of thing. That doesn't happen with CWF very rarely and stuff. Do they miscalculate and stuff? But it's so character driven, and then there's an attention to detail that sometimes is lacking in other things. Like Vince is awesome at the details when it comes to making sure there's not a Hulk Hogan poster or a Rock poster or a Cena poster that there's no seats empty in the poster, you know? Right. And he's great now at the grand spectacles, but sometimes he misses some of the little things that because like they say, it's entertainment. Wins and losses don't matter. Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but they do.
Absolutely. And to me, Pete, I will take umbrage with one thing that you said, because I do think there is such a thing as a perfect booker, but there's only one, and it's the guy from Houston that was a 5-time WCW champion. The man is a national treasure, Pete.
You should get booed for that one. Is there a drop for that? Boo!
You gotta love it, Pete. You gotta love it. But real quick, let's switch gears, man, because like I said, you are not just the oracle of the indies, but you are, our encyclopedia to the world at large outside of the WWE when it comes to professional wrestling. And I'm wondering what else is on your radar right now besides CWF. Are there any other indie stateside or that have got your attention, or even new? What currently is on Pete's menu and Pete's plate right now?
Well, I'll tell you, because I'm in Texas, and in November, of course, Survivor Series is in Houston. They're doing a big NXT in Houston.
Home of
They're
Booker
also
T.
running in Austin and San Antonio the 2 days prior, Thursday and Friday. And Ring of Honor has a show Friday, and they're bringing Ring of Honor is not laying down. They're just signed Kenny Omega to the show. The Bullet Club's going to be there. We know Cody Rhodes is going to be there. I don't know about what's his name, Marty Scurll yet. I got to look. I think he's going to be there too. I mean, it looks like they're actively wanting to outdraw NXT, and I'm curious to see how it works out, because let's see how big of a draw Kenny Omega is to the casuals in San Antonio when you can go head to head with NXT and with Shawn Michaels as special referee in the main event of Drew McIntyre versus, I can't remember who's main eventing on the San Antonio one with him, but Shawn Michaels is the referee.
That's going to be interesting, because I think sometimes, Pete, and it's not the worst thing in the world, but I think a lot of times doing, whether it's shows like this or writing for a lot of the sites online, you can get kind of trapped in a bubble at times where things that are important to us may not be important to the fans that just want to, take a weekend out and go watch a wrestling show. So I don't know how much traction, the Bullet Club thing and the whole cease and desist, Tempest in the Teapot controversy, if you will. I don't know how much of that charts with people that aren't so invested and so educated, I guess I'd put it, on what goes on in the world of professional wrestling. I don't know if, your average mom or dad and the kids in San Antonio are like, we got to go see the Bullet Club. We got to go see Kenny Omega, even despite the fact that those are, great acts right now.
Yeah, it's curious on how often how often you have these big shows running, because not only that, you have on Saturday, you have NXT in Houston running, and then you have a big-time Wrestle Circus show running in Austin, which is they actually, so far they've loaded up this show where it's a pretty damn looking good show where I'm going to go just to check it out. And another show I'm going to head up to is in December for IWHE out of Dallas or Fort Worth. I can't name it. I'm not allowed to say it, but I have a friend who's told me what the main event is, but I'm not allowed to say it because they're going to, obviously, I don't want to steal their thunder. So I'm looking forward to that show. A guy who I knew a guy on the horizon that I saw recently at an Inspire Pro show working ACH. It's a guy named Rex Andrews. So keep an eye on him. He's a guy who falls into like the grappler type of Zack Sabre Jr., Timothy Thatcher, that type of ilk. So I could probably see him involved in the next year or two. So just keep an eye out for him. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I mean, in the Indies, that's the thing. Powerbomb TV, I think it's that really helped out with them getting starting in December, having the Smart Mark video catalog going to be on Powerbomb TV. So these promotions that just have their own service, I think they're missing the boat. Where you can go, why would you spend $9 on a Rev Pro or a Progress, where you're just getting their shows on there, when you get a Powerbomb TV or a High Spots network, where you're able to get a ton of different type of content. I think that's another thing, is streaming services are getting much better. Powerbomb just got on, dropped their Roku app a few days ago. I think that is real interesting. Has a lot of fun Southern promotions on there. It's Lucha, has a little bit of everything. They just had a free, not free, well, if you're a subscriber, Powerbomb, they do a lot of live streaming, and they had a little bit of everything, some Lucha guys, which they highlighted. They came up with their own TV champion for the streaming service, which is now Jonathan Gresham. John Gresham, who's a great worker, and he's working heel, kind of like an old Steve Regal type of thing. And I think that's real exciting to make him the face of the streaming service.
I like that. Going back to the match in San Antonio, I know the listeners are like screaming at their listening device of choice. It is Adam Cole taking on Drew for that match that HBK is going to referee.
Yes, yeah, it's Alex Cole and Drew McIntyre. Yes, it is.
So that should be fun. But the last thing I wanted to know, Pete, because I can't have you on the main event without talking about some New Japan, is are you excited as of yet for Power Struggle coming up in November?
I always am because they usually put on good shows. I mean, very rarely do they. I mean, I'm not as high on New Japan as like the real hardcore New Japan fans, who I think are insanely biased on the product. But I do think they put out a really good product. Hey!
There'll be no Dave Meltzer slander here, Pete.
Yeah, I got a kick out of Dave in the Observer when he said something like he heard the average of the G1s was like 55 or 60 4-star matches in the G1 or whatever it was. I had 20 then, and I think Chad Campbell had like 22. So obviously you didn't invite Chad and I's numbers into his equation. But yeah, I usually do look forward to it. But he's getting geared up for Wrestle Kingdom in January, so everything is just getting there, and it's kind of right now we're on the journey of almost like gearing up at the Rumble for WrestleMania in a way.
Pete, let me ask you something, kind of going back to CWF for a minute, but more a general question about streaming. I'm on both sites. By the way, it's CWF247.com is the main website. And then I'm on the YouTube page right now. Let me tell you something. There is everything on the YouTube subscription. I mean, it's got all 128 episodes of Worldwide. In fact, the Rumble is up there right now.
Yeah.
Do you think that some of these similar sized indie groups like CWF and Stutzy and some of these other, do you think, should they take advantage of YouTube more? Because, I mean, obviously it's free, so they're not getting, but the pub is the pub, you know what I mean? And you want to get people to the live shows, and as you've said, that weekend was awesome. Should other kind of indie promotions, are there others that you know of that take advantage of YouTube as much as CWF does?
No, I think CWF is really like the only one that really used it as a business model. And it was just funny that you asked this question. Is one of the workers there, we were talking, and he told me when they first brought up the subject to him about the YouTube thing, he thought it was like the dumbest idea. Why? Who cares what people in some other area of the States is watching it? It's not going to help us business-wise. And in the long run, he told me, he goes, I'm glad I was wrong because it really has helped the business. We sell more tickets. You get more positive buzz. And it helps the promotion, but also helps the boys who work that promotion because you get on there and you get national recognition, and you're able to, people see it and or other promotions see it and they're like, okay, wow, this guy can go. Let's book him. Like a guy named White Mike, who really came out of nowhere in the last year or two, was pretty much his first really big break was CWF Mid-Atlantic. Now he's getting big-time bookings. He was just on the last Evolve show. He's gotten over. His gimmick's gotten over. Now he's teaming up with Timothy Lou Redden as the Gymnasty Boys, and they're getting a lot of bookings. Cody Rhodes worked with him, put him over as like he's the new Dusty Rhodes type character. And this is all based off of Mid-Atlantic because people saw him on this show. Then they wanted to book him because he was an entertaining act, and now he's getting bookings all over the United States because of it. He moved from Carolinas, so he's not a regular on CWF anymore. He still shows up, but just not as regular because he moved to Florida, which is where a lot of the promotions are, and a lot of these guys want to be in Florida because it's one step closer to NXT.
Now merchandise.
But I think if you have a promotion, I think it could help you if you're a small promotion. It could help you draw people because if you do what, especially the way the booking is, they're not booking a show to have throwing 5-star matches every single time. They're booking with consequences. They're booking, with wins and losses. They're booking for things to matter. If a promotion, if you're drawing 50 people, but you start booking it better and you see it's episodic, then people start following it. I mean, it's just that's kind of how it was. Someone put it on to me, and then I feel because we review it every time This Week in Wrestling, I feel I'm not saying I've had any impact whatsoever, but I feel like I've gotten people to put more eyeballs on the promotion and something with other shows. And people start talking about it. I mean, on Twitter, it was clearly buzzworthy Wednesday night when people were watching that Rumble live on Twitter. And, of course, it's in a bubble because people follow me because of my show because that's what my Twitter handle is all about. So, I mean, a lot of those people are followers because they listen to the show. But it came across really like it was really buzzworthy on my Twitter, and that was with a World Series game.
I think merchandise also a big deal, Pete. And as I'm looking on CWF247.com, we have a single logo shirt, which you can get for $14.99, up to extra large. After that is another $5. But I think maybe you and Stutzy got to work on, maybe you can help him, because if I'm not wearing a T-shirt that says Snooty Fox on it, it ain't going anywhere, brother. All right? I'll wear anything. So we need some Snooty Fox merchandise is what we need.
Now, he had his own, I think he might have had his own stuff. Like, I bought a Eric Royal shirt, which was, they call him Ace, and it's kind of like the picture of the Planet of the Apes, but it's Planet of the Ace. So I got that shirt.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm not the only one. That whole arena had Planet of the Ace shirts on.
Shit, dude. I would definitely. You mean so it says Planet of the Ace, but it's in like the font of the movie?
Yeah.
Fucking A, I'd wear that.
Yeah.
Nobody. I don't even have to know who he is. Well, now I know who he is, thanks to you. But yeah, we got the logo shirt, black with the CWF Mid-Atlantic logo shirt. So yeah, Explosive Elements is this coming Saturday night in Gibsonville at the Mid-Atlantic Sportatorium. Let me take a quick check here, see what our card is, and let's see here. All right.
Is Reginald Bell Johnson on the show?
Yes, he is actually. Winner gets to interview the dead stripper's sister. No. Eric Royal takes on Chet Sterling. Jesse Adler defends the worldwide television title. And Trevor Lee, of course, will defend the CWF Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship. So there you go. That's on the 28th. That's this Saturday at the Sportatorium in Gibsonville. And
eventually that will air on their YouTube channel.
What's that?
And eventually that all airs on the YouTube
channel.
channel.
Absolutely. November 11th, they've got the Rising Generation League event, rounds 1 and 2 of the RGL tournament. November 18th, Ultimate Survivor. And, of course, they have their Christmas show and then their anniversary show, Battlecade 13. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Last year's
X8.
Battlecade was one of the best shows of the year, if you ask me.
Battlecade X8, which will take place on December 30th. So, CWF247.com. It's our boy Stutzy, and he kicks ass. So check his stuff out. Pete, always a pleasure, brother. I love having you on any show that I'm on. In fact, you'll be joining us in a few weeks on the Place to Be podcast.
Yep.
So looking forward to that as we looking forward towards WrestleMania 3. So, by the way, of course, we did Place to Be podcast last night. What do you got on the horizon, sir? Oh, I know what I wanted to talk to you about. I was talking with, of course, our mutual friend, Mr. Nelson, last night as he was on our show. And I was telling him that, of course, your guys' show about the going back to the world-class episodes on the network. I want a retrospective, and I would be no problem being a guest, on exploits of the great Tom Boogaloo Shaft. Put me on.
Well, that would take off 2 minutes.
Exactly.
I haven't done any great exploits yet of this guy.
Exactly. He is my guy, Tom Boogaloo Shaft.
We all hate him.
I'm watching them as well. I've been watching them, and I'm up to today. I think I watched the. By the way, how far up are you guys? I got to catch up on how far up are you guys right now in terms of?
We're in January, March. We're at the end of April. I think we're starting May. We just put 2 shows in the can, which was the last 2 shows of April.
Yep. Okay. Because I'm watching ahead, and today I watched late July. I think July 24th of '82, and pretty memorable moment. First time we see a bald King Kong Bundy.
Nice.
There we go. Didn't he look weird with hair? Strangest thing, wasn't he? It didn't even look like him. It's like
No. Changes the whole dynamic. I mean, that's obviously why he never drew the hair back out. I mean,
no, absolutely not. I agree. Are you an Armand Hussein fan?
No, I'm not.
No. Who really is, by the way? He was just getting in Gary Hart's way.
And it's all because of he used to do the gimmick with Oliver Humperdinck of H&H, and I think we haven't found out for sure, but I felt he was also booking the Carolinas at this point, and so he did the H&H thing to give our man Hussein the rub because Gary Hart couldn't be there every week.
And you could tell that because Gary Hart was only spotty at times on the t-shirts. So,
yep.
So, Pete, always a pleasure, my friend. Pete Schirmacher, everybody.
Definitely.
He's awesome.
Always fun coming on, man.
Yes.
Especially talking about CWF.
Oh, it was awesome. I'm glad you had a good time, and I want everybody, please, CWF247.com. Go on YouTube, find CWF Mid-Atlantic. Everything's there. I'm actually going to start watching the episodes of Worldwide because I want to watch this Rumble. If you say 4.5 stars, Pete, I trust you. Chad, I don't know.
Chad said it was second best match he's seen this year. That's coming pretty praise from him too.
Yeah, but Chad's a snob. You're actually not. So, no, I love you, Chadley.
And you see me marking out quite a bit in the front row.
Oh, you're in the front row. Yes. Oh, if I'm seeing the great Pete, then everything's top notch.
Let me tell you about these front row seats. It's a $25 VIP front row. You get a cushioned chair, okay, and it's all you can eat and drink. I mean, there's no beer. But it's all you can eat and drink from the concession stands. That's an incredible $25.
$25?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, I mean, there's not a ton to eat. But, I mean, there's pizza, nachos, soda, candy, popcorn.
Wow. Let me tell you something. For $25, I'll eat popcorn until I fucking throw it up. That's it. Fine with me for $25. I got no problem with that.
Wrestling and a nice chair.
I mean, yeah, if you're getting the chair? Seriously?
Yeah. Huh?
Son of a bitch. Really? You get the chair, too?
Well, we don't. I mean, you get to sit in it. You don't keep it.
Oh, shit. Thanks for crushing my hopes and dreams.
Yeah, but it's a nice soft chair. It's not like a normal indie where you get the aluminum chair. This is a nice.
Stutzy's not made out of
table with.
Stutzy's not made out of money, Scott.
I know, but I was hoping to have a chair with Stutzy's face on the cushion. That would have been fantastic. Come on. It'd be the most cherished thing I own.
Right there.
No wonder they call him the chairman of CWF.
Woohoo! Pete, thank you. Always a pleasure. Brother Nate, as always to you, a great pleasure. We'll be back in 2 weeks. As you know, today the third quarter report came out for WWE, so you know what that means, Nate. In 2 weeks, we'll have our man Brandon come on and break it down for us, kind of chew the fat for us on how the third, which was actually one of the most lucrative quarters in WWE history. But they still have some work to do.
Maybe Nia will get a raise and she'll come back.
Or she'll beat Asuka. That ain't going to happen. Anyway. Yeah, Brother Nate, we'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll talk more as we get closer to Survivor Series. And we'll have Brandon Howard on to kind of break down the third quarter for us. And see what else is going on business-wise in WWE. So, for Chris Jordan, for the great Pete, I will talk to you in a couple weeks. For Brother Nate, I'll talk to you in a couple weeks. I'm Scott Solo. You've been in the main event. Now, if I can love Snooty Fox as much as I love Jervis Cottonbelly,